Well, welcome back, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Recreation Rendezvous, the Bloomington Parks and Recreation podcast at the junction of nature and play. And with me in the studio today is a very special guest, our community events coordinator, Bill Ream. Welcome, Bill.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much. Yeah, thanks so much for being on the podcast today here in the Banneker Community Center podcast studio. So we are really excited to have Bill with us today because Bill has a brand new event coming up in the summer of 2025. And get ready for this, the very first ever, the inaugural, never before seen, Flights of Fancy, Kites and Bubbles in the Park. So, Bill, how whimsical, how magical, where did this idea come from?
Well, it kind of came about. I was literally searching online for new events that people want to do in a park, and things kept coming up with lists, and one of them was go fly a kite, and another one had, well, take bubbles to the park. And I had thought about having a kite festival years ago, and my family is big into kites. And I'm like, you know what? I think I can come up with something. So the inspiration was just to have a day in the park with kites and bubbles. And then I came up with the sort of catchy name. And there we are. We're just planning on having some kites out there. People can bring their own, or we'll have some that will be part of the entrance, that kids can get and kind of make their own, create their own, use their own creativity, that sort of thing.
That is so interesting that the World Wide Web, the world of the internet, AI, if I dare say it, when you ask for fun things to do in the park, that it keeps coming up with kites. Why do you think that is? Why kites of all things?
Because it's something simple and economical that any families can do. And a lot of the lists were from parents, and they said that's where it came from. They're like, oh, just go to the local store and grab a cheap kite and let your kid run around the park with it, and they'll have a blast in the afternoon. And I know some folks that have some kites, so I'll ask them to come out. So have some different kinds that the kids can see, and maybe some tips from the people that do kite flying all the time.
So we can maybe expect some demos, some, dare I say it, if they exist, a kite flying professional, maybe some tips and tricks?
Possibly. I don't know if they're the ones I know. I don't know that they would consider themselves professional. But they do have a good time. They have many, many kites. And they go different places, and they just have always loved it. So they're always love to interact with the kids and show them whether it's a giant kite or a little one, that show them that they can either run with the kite or they can do some other techniques to get the kite up in the air and just to get it out there. And the park it's at this year in Switchyard is very windy at certain times, so we think it'll be a good spot where you're kind of out in the open area, and gonna kind of take it from there and throw some bubbles in there. Hopefully bubbles more than just the little bubbles in the bottle. I'm hoping to get some bigger things, like a big tub, and have big wands and other ropes and things and hopefully I can find someone that can help me kind of create some big bubbles, maybe even some of the bubbles that can be put around a kid, that they can stand there and they can bring the bubble up around them. So they're like encased in a big giant bubble. Something like that is what I'm hoping for.
Well, it sounds like a great spectator sport as well as something fun to participate in as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Well, I remember having a kite as a little girl, and I was so excited about it because it had a unicorn Pegasus or something like that. And what I remember most is that little tiny, like golf ball size bit of really frail string, and how my poor beautiful Pegasus unicorn kite went into this like spinning death spiral and then ended up in a tree. So this event is at Switchyard Park, and there's some trees, but it sounds like you kind of have a vision for where this might take place.
Yeah, we're hoping to have it. I'm planning on having it out in the grass by the main stage area, and there are some trees kind of on the periphery and up on some of the hills, but hopefully we can keep away from those and just let them do their things. And like you say, we don't want to have the Charlie Brown moment with a kite lost in the tree.
I was going to ask you if you remembered the kite-eating tree from those Peanuts cartoons.
Yes, for sure. That's definitely my generation. So, yeah, and then there's, like I said, there's all different sizes And the folks, the couple that I'm pretty sure are coming, they have everything from the little standard kite, sometimes they call them the Delta kites, or they look like a diamond, or they have some that I know they have one that looks like a dragon. They have some that looks like one that looks like a ship, anything and everything. And then they have there's kites that instead of just a one string, it's two strings, so you can maneuver it. It's stunt kites. That's the word I'm looking for. So they can maneuver the kite around with just by moving their hands around, and it's kind of interesting to see, and makes all kinds of noise and stuff as it's going through the air.
Well, I do have to ask you, as an event planner, there's probably some really exciting parts about planning an event like this, and there's probably some nerve-wracking things about planning an event like this. What's the best and worst part of this plan?
The best is it's a fun. You get to be really super creative, and there's almost no limits with it. I say that, but then the caveat is you have to be able to be that super creative, but within the confines of a park or being able to have an event and not have it get too chaotic and out of control. It's always fun when people come in and they go, "Wow, this is great." That's always the best part, is to have the kids, especially, because there's just no filter. They'll just, if they like it, they're like, "Yeah, this is awesome." If they don't, well, they don't. Then we'll just like, "Okay, well, what can we do better next time?" This sort of event, probably the biggest thing to worry about would be the weather. We don't want it too windy. We definitely don't want, thunderstorms and stuff like that, just for people's safety, that sort of thing. We always take that into account. There's always a plan for it, whether it's officially written down in a formal emergency plan, or it's just kind of in the notes, the planning notes, or in my head, maybe, that sort of thing. Well, if something happens, we go here, this goes there. That can be, if something does come up, that can be probably the most nerve-wracking. I've had that at a recent event where you could see the storm rolling in. We're like, should we go inside? What are we doing? It all worked out in the end. So that's probably the most nerve-wracking, is those unpredictable things.
Anyone who's ever tried to do what you do all the time, and that is plan an outdoor event, you are at the mercy of whatever the weather tries to throw at you, which brings to mind, of course, the other famous kite in American history, which is the kite of Ben Franklin with a key tied to it, flying it in a thunderstorm. Maybe not so much of that this year.
None of that. No keys. No, we don't want any lightning bolts coming down to prove that, any kind of electrical theories or anything like that.
So was there any time that you thought, oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into? Kites and bubbles in the park.
Once in a while, this is one of those that it starts as a small idea, and sometimes people say, well, you don't need to have a big event. We want you to have an event. It doesn't need to be a big event. But then you get an idea and it gets going, and then someone says, well, what if you add this? And what if you add this? It would be great if you could do this. It's pretty soon you're pulling all these things and you're kind of running around in circles. But when it all comes in the end, and people are all there and they're all having a good time, that makes it all worth it.
Well, it seems like anytime we have an event, the first question is there going to be food there, right? Everyone wants to add a food truck, and then next thing you know, there's dancing poodles, and it's, like you said, it's morphed into something really, really big. So now, in the course of your planning and thinking about this ideal, beautiful blue sky, I'm picturing a soft breeze. What's your idea of success? What's gonna, on the day after Flights of Fancy, what are you gonna look back on and say, yeah, this event was a success?
For me, it's there's a little bit of the monetary in there to make sure that I cover my budget. But for me, it's kind of the bigger picture. Did everything go off? I won't say necessarily without a hitch, because that it's almost impossible. There's always some tiny little thing, even if the public never knows it. It's behind the scenes. Oh, we forgot to bring a trash can. Somebody go get a trash can. That sort of thing. Whatever the case may be. As long as things go smoothly, everybody's safe. There's no incidents or accidents. Ideally, the weather holds out. And for me, it's just about having people have a good time. We are some of the fun providers, I guess, would be. I kind of fell into events by accident years ago. And here I am all these years later, many years later, I just want to show people a good time out in a park, in a
Yeah.
sometimes in a different way and something unusual. And
Yeah, and here you are blowing bubbles in the park.
exactly,
So yeah, what a fun journey. And like you said, doing some internet creativity and then just letting your imagination soar. So, I heard you say that if we have an event that's fun and safe and the weather's decent and nobody around us knows that there's anything going on whatsoever out of the plan in the background, then that's a success. I think that's a pretty safe bet in the whole world, is that, hey, as long as nobody else knows there's a problem, then it's a success.
exactly. And it's for me, it's just about did it kind of work to plan? Was the plan working? Did it go well? Do we receive some comments, compliments, that sort of thing? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Sometimes you can just tell, but when the kids are running around smiling and carrying on, I do everything from little kids events to huge events like parades and festivals and things, and I get all ages on the spectrum. So you can still kind of tell when someone's having a good time. Some others are hard to tell, but that's for me. That's kind of what it's all about, is make sure that I've put it out there. I'm having a good time, and hopefully everybody around me is having a good time. And we've got a really great team here at the department. We've got some really creative folks that if I need something, I'm like, I can't figure something out. I can go, hey, what do you think about this? And it happens all the time. Sometimes they bring stuff to me and go, what about this for your event? What about this? What about this? Sometimes it's a little much, but sometimes it's a perfect fit. Sometimes we kind of put it in the back of my head and go, yeah, let me work on that, see where that's going to work out. So yeah, having all of us have a good time, and as long as I made my budget, that's not as big of a priority for me, but it is there that I always have to keep in the back of my head, because we're not billionaires or anything and don't have unlimited money, so we do what we can with what we have.
Yeah,
And
we
usually it
definitely
works out.
want to be responsible with taxpayer dollars. So thank you out there in podcast land, Mr. and Mrs. John Q. Taxpayer. Thank you so much for helping support parks and recreation initiatives. And you touched on something, Bill, that I think is super important, and that is that festivals, events like the ones that you're creating, so many parks and things that we do, it's not just for kids. It's for anyone who has a joyful spirit and just wants to participate. Sort of one of those ageless things. Doesn't matter if you're a great kite flyer or if you're super creative or maybe you just want to come out and enjoy a fun day in the park.
Yeah, exactly. And as I put it in one of the things I wrote about the event, and it can be whether you're a kid or still a kid at heart, it makes no difference how old you are. You still, and that was to do with the bubbles, but the kites, any of that sort of stuff. And like you mentioned earlier, some of my events, people just come to watch, even if they don't, maybe it's grandparents whose grandkids are elsewhere and they just want to see, kind of get the vibe of maybe if the grandkids come visit, we can bring them to a similar event, or we can bring them out to this park and do something. There's always the observation part of it that is fun for people too. And even if they don't have to pay anything, they're just there, they're just watching. They bring their lawn chairs, they sit. That happens at multiple events. So that's kind of a fun aspect of events in general, just kind of being a part of it, being a part of the vibe that's going on.
Well, Bill, best of luck to you and the rest of the community events team. We have our fingers and toes and our kite strings crossed and hope that we have a fantastic day for Flights of Fancy. And since we talked about the weather, it's probably worth mentioning to go ahead and put our community events hotline in your phone. So if the weather does look a little threatening, or you just want to check on conditions before you come out to Switchyard Park, to give the hotline a call. And that number is 812-349-3750. And it is literally up to the minute information about all of our community events, the schedule, the time frames, the locations, and if things have to be delayed or scooted around a little bit because of the weather. So that's an important information to have. Bill, thank you so much for being in the podcast studio with us today, and best of luck with Flights of Fancy.
Thank you for having me. Hopefully everybody come out and see some fun kites and play with a few bubbles, no matter how old you are.
Yeah, and if you do make it out to Flights of Fancy and you want to thank Bill in person, you may be asking yourself, well, how do I recognize him? Well, Bill is also our resident Santa. Bill is one of the few, the proud, with a real beard, and is our Santa for our annual Santa Paws event for dogs for our Yappy Holidays in December. So if you see someone who looks particularly jolly, then that would be Bill out at Switchyard Park for Flights of Fancy. Thank you so much for tuning in today and listening to our podcast episode of Recreation Rendezvous at the junction of nature and play. This is Julie Ramey with the City of Bloomington Parks and Recreation Department. Again, thanks so much to the Banneker Community Center for hosting our fabulous state-of-the-art podcast studio, and to our podcast wizard, Caleb Poor, who does all of the production and makes this podcast sound amazing. Find us wherever you find your podcasts, Recreation Rendezvous in the city of Bloomington, Indiana. And until next time, have a great time out in a city park.